All right, now to this. President Trump will hold a cabinet meeting today at the White House where he's expected to discuss trade and his push to end the war in Gaza. Just last night, he hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss a potential ceasefire. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand is there at the White House with more on this. Natalie, good morning to you once again. So fill us in. How did last night's dinner go?
Good morning, Errol. Yeah, well, this dinner comes at a critical time because it's happening, as we know, indirect talks continue between Israel and Hamas on this 60-day ceasefire deal, which would also see a phased release of hostages. And the White House confirmed yesterday that a special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, will be traveling to Qatar where these talks are happening. The president has still remained hopeful that a ceasefire deal could be reached as early as this week. So he was asked about that last night, as well as potential negotiations with Iran. The president suggesting that the U.S. and Iran will be speaking soon, even though some Iranian state media reports indicate that Iran's foreign ministry denies that it's reached out to the United States to request talks. The president saying yesterday that we could learn more details today on that topic. And these questions will no doubt come up once again during that cabinet meeting that you referenced, his sixth one that's happening next hour.
And Natalie, there was something you mentioned when we spoke at 7 a.m. when it came to the president's new tariffs that he announced via these letters he's sending out. You kind of compared it to what the White House initially published in April when they said they were resetting tariffs with everyone. Help us understand the difference between what was set 90 days plus ago and what the president is saying now.
Yeah, if you compare those rates, what was announced in April, that chart that was released by the White House, and some of the tariffs that have been announced so far in these letters that just started going out, they are roughly in line, give or take a few percentage points. But really what the administration has said is they're kind of warning these countries that this will be the rate. You see 25% for Japan and South Korea, according to these new letters, unless these countries come to the table and negotiate. The last paragraph of the letters sent out by the president say that, you know, if you open up your markets or eliminate trade barriers, then these rates could be adjusted. There's the letter right there. And again, the White House setting a new deadline here of August 1st. CBS News' Ed O'Keefe asked the president whether that deadline could move. Take a listen.
Is the August 1 deadline firm now? Is that it?
I would say firm. No, I would say firm, but not 100% firm. If they call up and they say, would like to do something a different way, we're going to be open to that. But essentially, that's the way it is right now.
Now, one of the president's economic advisors gave a new cable news interview this morning and said that he's still optimistic more deals could be announced by the end of this week and coming days, but also said that other countries have to make concessions. Again, emphasizing here this is a slow-moving process, Errol, with changing deadlines.
Yeah, slow-moving process, and I was going to say with a slow-moving deadline as well. Natalie Brand with the latest at the White House. Thanks very much. Now, global markets have been steady since the newly announced tariffs. Here in the U.S., markets are relatively flat. Early trading here on the Dow Jones Industrial Average seems to be pulling back somewhat. Let's connect with CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly OGrady. She is there. And Kelly, you were here with me suffering with flies in the studio yesterday as we saw stocks slightly dip. Things seem to have stabilized. But can this really be tied to tariffs? What's happening?
Well, good news, no flies here, Errol, as of yet.
News.
So we're on track for today. Yeah, you know that we've kind of seen the markets a little bit up, a little bit down. The Dow obviously closed over 400 points down yesterday, but it wasn't that big rout that we saw in a number of days going back to April, some of the worst days since March of 2020. And really what's happening from investors that I've talked to, it's the fact that this deadline got pushed out to August 1st. So what that signals to investors is there's a lot more time to negotiate. I mean, a lot is relative, right? It's another 3 weeks. And it also, a couple of investors I spoke to zeroed in on the fact that the president last night said, you know, the August 1st deadline, it may be firm, it may be not. Now, we do know that sometimes he moves that deadline up, But generally on the Wall Street community, there's more time. The one country that I am particularly interested in to see if there is a letter sent out is Taiwan. And that's an important one because you go back to April, the tariff was going to be, I believe it was 34% with the White House's reciprocal tariffs. Taiwan's important because over 90% of the world's semiconductor chips, those are the things that power AI, are made in Taiwan. If you have a high tariff on those coming into the country, that's really going to hit stocks like NVIDIA as well as the big tech companies that are really focusing on AI development.
That's a really interesting spot, location, and sector to keep an eye out for. I'm wondering how the back and forth over tariffs, and we've discussed this year, impacts American businesses and the factory sector because they have to have inventory ready well in advance. Does the constant delay of a deadline give investors and business owners confidence that perhaps this isn't really set in stone, or does it really damage their ability to plan?
So it's the latter, Errol. We just talked about how investors sort of like this delay. For businesses, they have to plan. And there is the possibility that you're going to see these tariffs go into place August 1st or in the future. And so they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do they invest? Do they not? I did look at the Small Business Optimism Index this morning that essentially gives a temperature read on how small businesses are feeling. And inventory was an interesting one. They highlighted that they feel concerned that there is excess inventory. You sort of play out why that would be. A lot of companies front-loaded goods ahead of that tariff deadline. We've seen a consumer spending dip because people aren't buying as many of those goods. So kind of an interesting little result of that sort of front-loading ahead of the tariff deadline. But when it comes to investment, anecdotally, we are seeing companies essentially just wait and see.
Yeah, I feel like there's an index for everything. Small Business Confidence Index. You've got every data point we need. Kelly OGrady at the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks very much.